Need to turn on the, Sam, you need to turn on the recorder. Okay. The November 8th Planning Board meeting is called to order at 6:36. This is to advise that the notice of time, date, location, and to the extent known, agenda of the subject meeting was promptly posted in the public place reserved for such or similar announcements on November 1st, 2023, and transmitted to the Times, the Princeton Packet, and the West Windsor Employment Bureau News on November 1st, 2023, and filed with the Township Clerk on November 1st, 2023. Sam, can you please call the roll? Yes.
Here.
Yes. Ari.
Yes.
Applicant.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jeever.
Here.
Yes.
Councilman Holderman.
Here.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. First order, before we get into tonight's agenda items, I'll entertain anybody from the public wish to talk about any item that's not on the agenda or pending before the board. Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address. Okay, seeing no public comments on non-agenda items. First order of business, resolution PB 20-09 HSC West Windsor LLC, request for 1-year extension approval. Anybody have, I think, Linda, you sent amendments or that was for?
Not on that.
Okay,
Not in.
anybody have any amendments or content issues? It's typo. Okay. And any amendments, content issues that need to be addressed? Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Jerry had a typo, but he'll fix that. I'll entertain a motion to adopt you got that, Sam? Okay. Okay, that takes care of that. Next order of business is master plan, public hearing on the draft conservation plan element of the master plan.
Publication and service are in order and the board has jurisdiction.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, David, you want to kind of give us an overview and then we'll may have some comments or?
Absolutely. I should probably get sworn in now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So I swear, please state full name.
Sure. Good evening, everybody on the board and the public. My name is David Novak, N-O-V-A-K. I am a professional planner with Burgess Associates, and we are the township planning consultants. I've been working with West Windsor now for just about 6 years or so, or 7, maybe 6, I forget, but it's been a couple of years now. So tonight we're going to be discussing the draft conservation element of the master plan. It is dated October 4th, 2023. That document was revised based on edits and comments provided by the planning board at the August 16th hearing. Any ideas to discuss it tonight, solicit additional comments, and hopefully adopt it. Just as a little bit of background, we hear this term master plan a lot. It's important to discuss what a master plan actually is. It's a comprehensive, long-term strategic document which is intended to guide the growth and development of a community. So I always like to think of the master plan as a roadmap that identifies where a municipality presently is and where it wishes to be in the future. And it develops the general parameters around where development is to occur and where different types of development should occur. There are a number of mandatory and optional elements of a master plan. For the past several years, we've been working with the planning board on updating the master plan elements. We've completed several of those. So just as a very brief background, in 2020, we adopted a new land use plan. In 2019, we adopted a new housing element and fair share plan. 2021, on the same day, December 15th, we adopted a circulation plan and a utilities plan. In 2022, we adopted a community facilities plan. In 2018, we adopted an open space and recreation plan. 2023, just a few months ago in March, we adopted a farmland preservation plan. We adopted a section of the master plan which discusses relationships to other surrounding plans. And then in August of this plan element of the master plan, tonight, we're looking to adopt a new version of the conservation plan element. This is an optional element of the master plan. So it's an optional chapter of your master plan. The municipal land use law, which is this guiding document for wetlands, harbors, rivers and other waters, fisheries, endangered and threatened species, wildlife and other habitat, and which systematically analyze. And the answer is really twofold. One, the landscape of West Windsor has historically been in flux. So before that, we had English and Dutch settlers, and before that, the Lenni Lenape. When we look at the township in the mid-19th century, we had about 9 hamlets and a total population of 1,600 people. And today we're nearly 30,000 people. So it's becoming more and more important to understand how land is utilized. And other aspect is that we have a greater and broader understanding of climate change and its impacts. So cataloging and understanding those risks and those changes are important. And it's something that your community has done historically. You have a very robust environmental regulation, working, providing updates, edits, comments. So a lot of credit goes to them. The plan is largely informative. It's, I would say, densely packed with information. We organized it into several sections in order to help better. That organizational structure was based on the prior conservation plan. So there will be some sort of consistency between documents. Issues as well. There's 2 things I wanted to bring up before we go into the plan. And typically what we do is go section by section of G00009362. It has an active remediation program. So we'll be adding that to the plan as well. One of the other items that popped up was the inland flood protection rule. When we were working on this document, that rule was in a draft form. By the time we actually sent the first draft over to the board, it became effective. Specifically became effective on July 17th, 2023. The inland flood protection rule provides an update on the state's flood hazard and stormwater regulations. It was prepared and adopted in response to Superstorm Ida. And it provides an update by replacing prior precipitation estimates with new estimates, which account for observed and predicted rainfall. So it's essentially extrapolating outward. The new rules apply to new construction projects. They apply to a modification of existing buildings and flood-prone areas. There are a couple of exemptions built in. Projects that would be exempted would be ones that had received approval for flood hazard area applications submitted prior to the effective date of that rule. Projects which have received all federal, state, and local approvals required for construction or had commenced construction already, or were not considered part of a regulated flood hazard area prior to the effective date of the rules. There is a summary of the flood hazard rules provided in the conservation document. There's 5 key points. I can go into that, but there's really 2 major items that I think we'll see the most impact from these new rules. The first is that the elevation of habitable first floors will be 2 feet higher than currently indicated on NJDEP state flood maps and 3 feet higher than indicated on FEMA maps. So any type of elevation that was previously identified that on either NJDEP or FEMA maps, the habitable flood elevation now needs to be either 2 feet or 3 feet above that. Also, applicants for certain permits will have to use the NJDEP's New Jersey specific precipitation data when calculating peak flow rates of streams and rivers for permits under the flood hazard area rules. And again, that's going to be utilizing future projections of rainfall. So I want to bring those 2 things up because those were 2 changes that happened since the submission of the prior document. So that being said, Mr. Chairman, if you want to take it section by section.
Process question.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned the addition of a contaminated site.
Mhm.
How does our state government inform the townships of that situation? I mean, did you stumble on it?
It was,
Were we
actually-
informed- Were we,
Mhm.
West Windsor, informed in a particular way? How's that information communicated?
So there's actually a public sign that's up on there. It has the LSRP number and contact information. It was brought up to me by a member of the public.
But it's not like DEP.
I
reaches
don't,
out to the township, says, hey, we found another contaminated site in your region.
I wonder, at least for certain wetland applications or flood hazard area applications, there is notification provided to the clerk. So I don't know if it works similarly to that. But for me, it was just brought up by a member of the public, and they have a sign up there too.
Sam, do you have any information on that? You know, let me swear you in. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give me the truth? I do. So sworn or affirmed.
Typically, the clerk's office gets notification from state DEP if there's wetland applications or floodplain applications or contamination sites too. And it typically does go to the engineering office and the health office.
We might consider adding a line to be clear. Something like adding a line, applications that have been deemed accepted by the land use office and or approved by the planning board prior to July 17th, 2023 are not required by law to abide by the new flood protection rule. Is that correct?
Is-
Out there, or if the planning board approves something,
Mhm.
but let's say that DEP or DOT hasn't. or-
So yeah, we don't have the power to retroactively require an applicant who had received
Right.
approval prior to the adoption of that plan to come back in front of us.
Right, I
That's-
want
yeah.
to make that.
So
that
why
clear.
don't you check that language, whether it's accurate and then include it? I don't.
Okay, Linda, can you just read it one more time? I'm sorry.
I'll give you,
Or
give you a
even better,
copy.
yeah.
yeah, I've got other stuff, but for now, take a look at that and you guys can tweak it if the board is open to that.
Yeah, and what we'll do is that we can always check that with our municipal engineer as well, but I believe what you said is accurate. So I just want to double check with
I
him,
just
but
want people to understand that because we get into all these arguments and people get crazy online.
yeah,
I would like that reference since we're talking about the new rule there.
don't totally understand. Yeah,
Clear
and there
understanding.
are certain exemptions built in, so it's important to understand that
Yeah.
not everything is going to be subject to these regulations.
Yeah, we want to indicate where in the plan it would be because
I would,
when we vote on this, we're voting on a particular document. We can amend it tonight. No doubt
Yes.
about that. But you know, it can't be kind of a ambiguous thing. Let's add another.
we can get there. I would imagine it would be section 6.3, which is surface water, and there's a section in there identified as flood hazard areas.
Yeah, what page? I have it marked there.
That would be page 41 if you're not in the red line version.
Well, let's do the red line version.
No.
I mean, that's easier. Yeah, 40, well, 42 of the red line if you're using 40, the red line version. That's what I, you know,
37. Page 37. Yes.
It would also be page 42. So yeah,
yeah, 40. I'm looking at the red line version.
it coincidentally is it's one of those rare instances where the red line and the non-red line match up. It would be page 42.
I'm on 42. There's a typo at the end of that red line. Go up.
I
It's like
noticed that when I was
stones.
prepping. Future stones, yes.
Storms.
It should be storms.
Caught that. It's the first time, I guess. but
Okay, we're good on that?
Still not
Okay,
sure.
got it. Jerry's got to
Page
work on
42.
some wording.
42. Is that where we're adding the, I thought it was 47, we're adding the language. No, 42, it's 42.
42 of the non-red line version, Dave.
Spell it.
Of the red line version, it's page 42.
Page 42, yes, you're gonna see a section in there called flood, flood hazard areas. And I'm thinking it should probably be added on the last line of that second full paragraph.
Yeah, that's where I would
Actually,
go.
David, the last paragraph of that section, before the section riparian zones starts, it addresses directly the flood protection. law.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if that's the place where it should be. That's the only mention is directly in that
Yeah.
section that you're looking at.
Right above riparian zones, right?
Right above the
Yeah.
riparian zone.
That paragraph, yeah, that,
Paragraph is
yes, adding a sentence to that last paragraph.
where Linda's
Yes.
text might go.
Okay, so we're good on that?
Well, Jerry, you write with something or?
Well, no, I'm just making a note that all I wrote is add Linda's language, but David has the language.
Okay.
A line to the second full paragraph on page 42, right above the section where riparian zones begins. It will be something along the lines of applications which have been deemed accepted by the land use office and or approved by the planning board prior to July 17th, 2023 are not required by law to abide by the new flood protection rule.
Would it make sense to also cite the actual state law? You have it as
Maybe
inland flood protection rule, but is there a citation?
There is a citation, yes, the NJSA, we can,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, footnote.
Oh, you got
that.
it down the
Yeah.
bottom. Got it.
oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
a footnote, hyperlink to
Got it.
the actual
Yeah.
law.
All right, good.
Okay. Lindy, please, return Linda's cheat sheet.
Let me type.
Okay. So, do we want to start?
Let me go around and see who has, instead of going page by page,
Mhm.
because then we'll never finish. We'll have people that have looked through it and have comments of substance to highlight. And then we can just hit on the pages and the sections and so on.
Well, to preface, it says members of the West Windsor Planning Board and it lists all of our professionals. We don't have the responsibility for this document, the planning board does. But we wanted to make sure that we thank them for their review, but
So the recommendation is to delete the header, but keep the text underneath that.
yeah, so they're redlining. Thanking them is fine. Their names under it is fine. So you're just taking out members of the Township of West Windsor Environmental Commission, you're just deleting that.
Okay.
Because they don't vote on this up here.
I don't know. What is wrong with recognizing them?
No,
know
we
that
are,
they're
we are thanking them.
I know, so you
We're
have
good.
each of them by name. You don't want to remove their name.
No, we're not. We're not.
Okay.
No, it's, do you have the tracking change version in front of you?
Yep.
Yeah, we thank them. And it's just like, there were other ones that were done like that too with the Historical Society, where we thank them and put their names in. That's all good.
Okay. You good, David?
I think there's a typo, page 5, the 4th paragraph. It should read, it's apostrophe S instead of ITS. That's-
Exactly what they do.
Someone come up with that,
That is correct, yep.
okay? And
Yeah.
Hold on one second. page 70, section 12. You say cultural sites.
Mhm.
But then on page 70, 73 to 76, it says historical sites. So are we mixing cultural sites and historical sites and homes, and are we mixing everything? Like, is that?
It should
Second.
probably, so cultural sites was kind of the branch that the prior conservation plan used, and then included archaeological sites and historical sites. So it still makes sense to include that list in there. Specifically this list under section 12.3, and that does match up with our previously adopted historic preservation plan. To eliminate that kind of confusion or discrepancy, we could change the title of section 12 from cultural sites to archaeological and historical sites.
So it's whatever represents the historical sites.
Mhm.
Should it just be historical sites instead of just cultural sites, or what does this list?
It has archaeological in there too, so it would be typically, it would be technically archaeological and historical sites. That's the full title.
That is cultural. I mean, that relates to the culture.
So, technical question.
Is cultural considered and historical?
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah, that's the way it was previously handled, and it's not
Right.
out of the
to
ordinary.
me, it's one, it doesn't, whatever everybody thinks. You want to change it or you want to leave it? Anybody?
I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah, so, okay, so archaeological and historical go under the definition of cultural sites. Okay.
I think I did that
You know, I
previously
struggle
as
with-
well, too.
I struggle.
I
with
know,
changing-
and I-
You need to change your name to like that, like.
Wait, I'm looking for it right now.
Section.
I'm about to say. I'll start again. The Greenbelt Plan, section 3.2, and also in the appendix with the other maps. Could there be the addition of the Greenbelt Plan map to the appendix?
Yes, yes, we can do that, but we can do both of those things.
Okay. That's that item. Another item, okay, going back to, section 11.1. Notice I'm using section demarcations as opposed to page numbers because some are looking at the red line text and some are not. So in section 11.1, in the visuals, and I brought this up last time
Mhm.
and you addressed it almost, in the circle graph that very 0.4% of barren land is to the bar graphs of state, county, and township comparisons, figure 7. You kept it.
Yes, that was. Yes,
Thank you. Going into the appendix mapping. On map number 1, stream or run label upon them. You see where I'm looking at, David?
not yet,
On
still making
map
my
number
way.
0.01.
One which cuts through a multifamily development. Oh, do you mean the ones that are
I'll make you
immediately?
research them, just
They
put
don't see-
just put labels, every other stream is labeled, they should be labeled, there probably are text references to them.
Princeton Chase.
I don't know their names,
It's
if I had a good map, I'd tell you.
off of Village Road.
No, you've made a lot of. Maps. And I do have one more map item,
Excellent.
in my copy of the standard text, not the red line text, because I didn't check it. On map number 10, known contaminated sites. I only have a map number 10. I only have, the only entry I have in my booklet is quadrant D. And I'm wondering if pages were left out in the preparation of the document.
No, it looks like it was, yeah, looks like there's a printing error there. So we will make,
I only have quad D. I don't
Yeah.
have other quads representing the contaminated site locations.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be our very last one now.
Very good.
We have quad D.
That's the red line.
Is that just quad D? There's no A, B, and C. And I guess just one, more of a general question, not a technical question, you know, do we have any more recommendations? You know, the section 16, and you know, we might hear something in public comment tonight. Do we have any more recommendations? I don't have any to add, but I just wanted to bring that up before the board. Section 16 is recommendations for relating to.
Dennis, nothing? Anything? Alan,
No.
nothing? Rob? Talking to Mike, please. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is your red button push?
Prepared and submitted,
You got it.
or something replace that.
Israel, no, I think Israel is still effective. Yeah. I believe so.
The reason I ask that is because I used to,
The section 15.3. Yep.
Of the rock formation, the rock formation, the whole article includes the information they need at a certain point, and it says that it's exposed at the surface in West Windsor along the principal railroad. You see that the last but one paragraph and the last but one line of that particular paragraph
It was, I'm sorry, section 4.
allocation.
So the question is, where is? I should be mapped out actually. So if we check on map,
We have a link, we have a footnote or a link, and we're both to the map and location where it is. Maybe we can make a little tourist site for it. Maybe it needs to be added to historic or cultural sites, archaeological sites.
bear with me. If you might not see too much there, but it's on page, I'm sorry, map 2, which is geology and aquifer resources. But from the naked eye, you might not see a lot. It's just underground geological formations. But if you look at map 2, coincidentally, it really follows that rail line through West Windsor. It dips a little bit towards, if you follow the rail line, which kind of cuts through from Lawrence to Plainsboro,
Yeah.
it's where the dark blue and the pink line up, as well as the dark blue and the dark green and the light green. It's where the dark blue and the pink line up as
That area.
So just to follow that point, maybe a footnote or map citation on it would just help identify it a little more clearer.
Yes, that would be C map
Would
02.
that not be considered an archaeological site? Which is worth mentioning.
I don't think so necessarily. No, I think it's just from the naked eye, it's not going to be very visible where those geologic formations are. It's just all subsurface.
It seems from your text on page 18 that it's visible, it's not at the surface unless it's observed. So is that, how do you understand that? Should we assume that it's visible or it's not visible?
I would assume it's not visible, it's just mapped. So that's all that means. So you won't be seeing too much there. That's exciting.
Maybe parentheses not visible,
Mhm.
not visible to naked eye or something next to map.
Mhm.
Because map just means identified, doesn't mean that you can see it. Just to be a little clearer that otherwise you'll have people running over there looking for it.
Please do not run to the railroad tracks.
Watch out for trains. Okay. Any,
Mike, just one.
yeah, again,
Yeah, so I just wanted to research it. So yes, it's still in effect, as you said, but I think what they did was they narrowly defined industrial and so much so that it was in response to, I guess, a business need to reduce the amount of process and procedure. So,
Got it. Okay, so
thank you.
that probably explains why the website looks very dated now too. So
Thank you.
okay,
I just have one little question.
again,
In section 13, wastewater disposal, is that include cleaner? Runoff, you talk about wastewater generated goes through the sewage pipe. That include if you're lowering the levels in your pools, does that go in the sewage collection system?
I would imagine it would, yeah. It's getting drained. I mean, if somebody's draining their pool out to the street, I think it would go through there.
So the chlorinated water goes into the sewage.
Yeah.
Should that be added in there?
so you need.
More of an engineering question, not a, I don't know.
Okay.
Can you just explain this, right, how you would integrate that data, I think it's carbon monoxide, how do you describe that?
That is a question that is unfortunately above my pay grade. So this is, they have their own sophisticated measuring system. The science behind that, I'm relatively unfamiliar with. They do have local, they do have measuring apparatuses set up usually throughout the state. So if everybody remembers a couple months ago where the sky turned orange and we had that AQI quality warning on all of our phones where it was up to 100 or 150, those are based on different monitoring stations. So based on the air samples they take there, they're able to extrapolate that type of warning. So the science behind it, I don't necessarily know, but those are set up usually by the NJDEP.
Is there a footnote there that, you should have a footnote there that basically cites where it comes from?
Yeah, I would agree. We'll add a footnote there.
It shows at the bottom, there's a footnote number 27.
Oh, not on.
Oh, is it on the page prior?
Oh,
Yes.
the
Yep.
page
There we
prior.
go. By the EPA. There we go. Okay.
Is every, on page 27, is every measure coming from that footnote, hyperlink?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so then I think what you need to do, just a suggestion,
Mhm.
is that air quality standards, you need to have,
So if somebody's looking for a specific link, they can just find it there.
okay, I see why it went to that page. Okay.
They'll put it on
Table
the,
2's on next page.
Exactly.
they stick another one.
Okay,
Okay. So we'll add another link underneath the table though.
okay. Anything else?
Just a quick housekeeping type of thing.
Mhm.
When we get to tracking change version and then
That is amiss, not being distracted per se by following all the tracks.
And typically, I think for public notice things, for master plan documents, if you're looking to adopt a document, you need to have that final version because this also gets sent over to the county as well as to the state planning advocacy office. So
yeah,
they
but we
need
don't
to.
have the final version tonight. We're making all sorts of changes.
We-
all
well,
over
the
the
idea-
document.
This is the current version based on previous changes.
Right.
Right, but
I
we
mean-
are tonight making changes.
No, but the idea is, board doesn't have to do this, and it could basically continue this hearing. But if it wishes, it can vote on it, including all the amendments that have been articulated thus far. And if, unless somebody objects to some of them, but there really hasn't been any of that.
That otherwise it will never end. I mean, we
Yeah.
will keep finding something. There's never I haven't yet found a perfect document and I'm 61 years old.
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't vote with the changes. I'm just saying, after we vote, give me the hard copy that's the final version of it. Instead, but
Yeah.
whatever, I'm not gonna. make a big deal of
Yeah.
it.
Any other? Okay, I'll open up for the public to step up to the microphone and anything you want to talk about the draft conservation plan element of the master plan, please step up to the microphone, give your name and address. And our attorney will swear you in. Okay, seeing none.
We got one. Come on up.
Can you talk about this document? Is that what you're saying?
The conservation.
Conservation plan. The Dutch Neck one is on next. So
There's two documents.
you're going to hear me do a similar spiel and I apologize in advance, but that'll be no, next.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing regarding the conservation plan element.
So moved.
Mayor, second. Okay, moved by Alan, second by Anis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing's closed. Talk amongst yourselves. If there's nothing else, adopt draft conservation plan element with cited amendments that we discussed tonight.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Alan to adopt,
Second.
second by Jerica. Please call the roll, Sam.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Chantel,
Yes.
Mr. Panko, absent, Mr. Begg,
Yes.
Ms. Paris,
Yes.
Ms. Applegate,
Yes,
Councilwoman Chivers,
Yes,
Mayor Marate,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Hogerman,
Yes.
Chairman Clark.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Sue's gonna recuse herself. and just before we get started, of the Dutch Neck Planning and Zoning Study, following the public hearing until the residents have an opportunity to weigh in on the contents and understand fully any future implications pursuant to your direction in the past. I am contacting you as the chair and have not transmitted my request to other board members. Just this weekend, several Dutch Neck residents became aware of the document and many have concerns and would like to offer input to the study. They are frustrated by the fact that they feel this document was created without any feedback from the residents, many of whom have lived here for years and feel there was a lack of transparency on the part of our administration with the development of the study. One of the greatest concerns centers on Block 24, Lot 1, the property owned by Windsor Chapel. Uses for that property, other than residential, have been discussed among the residents. They would like to offer input with the development of the study before it becomes an adopted section of the master plan. I myself am curious whether the school district was contacted at all about any interest they may have in the property if it should be offered for sale by the church. There is a major parking deficit with events at the Dutch Neck School. So far, Windsor Chapel has permitted Dutch Neck School to use their parking lot. However, that need expands throughout the property and has involved the assistance of West Windsor police officers to provide control. I also understand that the pastor of Windsor Chapel has expressed concern about overuse of the property during school events attended by parents. The school may benefit by investigating its parking options, and this property might serve them well as their current school property cannot handle the influx of cars when special events occur throughout the year. As I have been advised, I understand that I should not participate as a board member due to the inclusion of a property we own. I am therefore, as a resident, requesting that the board table the vote on Wednesday and continue the public hearing to another date. It would be most beneficial for township officials and staff to host an information gathering session for residents, as has been done in the past with other issues. I understand the process, but inclusion in the master plan without full disclosure to the residents would be disturbing to many. I am attaching pictures of the parking concerns I and others have witnessed on the property. The school has been notified each time this happens and is aware, but has admitted they have no enforcement or answer to the problem. Perhaps they should be contacted and advised as to the potential options for the use of the property in the future. Thank you. Okay. You can pass around some pictures. Okay. Just a couple of comments. So thank you for an excellent letter, Sue. Appreciate it. From what I understand, this study has been posted on the West Windsor website for at least a month. Is that right, Sam?
Correct. The original draft was posted on July 17th.
Let me swear you in, because this is a
It's
separate,
a different one.
separate hearing. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
If the board remembers, we had our first public input on August 2nd. That document was posted on the website on July 17th. We did have members of the public. The next meeting is front page of the website, and it was also posted on the planning board website under the information page and the agenda for tonight's evening, for tonight's meeting.
Okay, just.
And this is the format for public comment. So if
Okay,
the
so,
board wants to continue it after they hear public comment, they're so inclined, they're able to do that.
so just so I understand, so we've met on, I remember meeting on this previously. And we always take input from the public, is that right? As long as I've been here. We never push through anything without input from the public on any application study that we do. As long as I've been here, that's been the process. One of the other thing in the letter that I'd like to mention is, as far as I know, there's, you know, from my conversations with various people, the Windsor Chapel has not been put up for sale, is that correct, or that we know of?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. And the last thing I'll mention regarding Dutch Neck School and the parking situation, although I can feel the pain of the parking and the overflow of, there's not a lot we can do because the school is making arrangements with the private property. And, for overflow parking. And we can contact the school, and I'm sure we have contacted the school, but is there anything we could do about that?
Well, as you said, it's private property. If Windsor Chapel doesn't want the school district to use their property, they can forbid that from happening.
Okay. Okay. And, we don't have a lot of say in what the school can, do with their, with their events, and, we can make suggestions, right? We can't really dictate, it's a school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the school, I mean, my kids, 3 of them, went to Dutch Neck School. So there were always events, back to school nights,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff that goes on, right? We all know that.
Yep.
Our kids went there.
And
And
the
they-
school has grown in size.
Oh, it's grown so much.
Right.
It has, absolutely. So they're using that property. I don't know whether they make a donation or not. However, it's worked out. That property has always been like the overflow of traffic because there's not enough parking at Dutch Neck School or in front of the school. So where they're gonna go, they go to that lot.
understand.
So, so that's one thing that the school should be included. I mean, we're publicly talking about uses for that, for the Windsor, the chapel property. We don't have knowledge that they're selling it, but maybe somebody there is thinking about it for the future. I don't know, but the fact that it got into the study, something is going on, some kind of
It's in
conversation.
the study due to location, right?
Well, yeah, but we're changing, it isn't like we're gonna approach them and, it just feels like there's been some conversations for possibilities.
My office has
of
had
that.
no
Linda.
contact with
That's
anybody
what I'm
interested
just-
in
I'm
purchasing
just
the
reading
property.
this When something like this gets into a document like this. I'm just saying that. So the other comment about the feedback on the study, I mentioned this at the last meeting that I felt that there should have been some kind of maybe more formal notification of residents that are in a study area, just like the next study might be Berrien City or a different part of town. We've done that in the past. And I know, and Sam, you were involved in those kind of discussions under the, Shea administration. And it's a lot, but I felt that when we do a Dutch Neck study, that we could reach out via maybe a letter and just say, look, here it is. I know we publicly put it on the internet and, on a planning board and the township website, and we did do all that. But sometimes I think when there's a study, especially there's some zoning changes, there's a lot of things in this study that we needed to reach out more. I really think that we should pivot and do more of that. I think that's important.
Well, that's not my decision. That's at the direction of the board. Whatever the board asks staff to do and the administration approves it, then we will go ahead and do that
I mean,
above and
it's a
beyond.
process issue. As we go through these studies, for all of them, I think there should be more outreach especially to the people that are in that area.
Like an application, all the properties get noticed in this study, or it's a
No,
study?
with a development application, all the proproperties within
The
200 feet get noticed. Jerry can explain the noticing requirements for master plan
So
hearings.
it's not required to, okay, you didn't understand, my question was, in an application process, properties will get noticed. This is not an application. This is a study of a certain area in town. Different. Okay.
Well, we talked about this the last time, and that goes beyond what the municipal land use law requires, and it's
That's right.
inconsistent with it, and I would not recommend that. And then, in fact, as a practical matter, where do you draw the line?
Well, you can make it let's,
Okay, well, I'm sorry, the public will have a chance to step up and speak, but we're debating amongst ourselves right now, and then we'll get into the study and the public will have a chance to step up and talk. Thank you. Good.
I think you could have a meeting and make it a public meeting. But, you know, with just notifying at least the people that are in that study area, because there's significant changes in here. And I think they want to know, they would like to know. I would want to know if someone was changing the zoning on my house.
Okay, but some of the, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, if you read some of the changes, grandfather in some of the zoning, which would make some non-conforming properties conforming. And thus increase the value of some of those properties.
Well, I understand. There's a few two-family homes, things like
I'm
that.
just saying
But
that
there's a lot of
There's
other
two
stuff.
sides to everything.
There's a lot of other stuff about setbacks and all of
Well-
that
well,
and,
that's
and
why we're here.
uh,
That's why we're here.
accessory dwelling units. I mean, these are,
Okay,
to me,
that's
big
why we're
issues.
here. Maybe some of the stuff has to be taken out. Maybe it has, some other stuff has to be included. We'll get input from the public, we'll debate amongst ourselves and we'll figure it out. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of comments. First thing is, there's been no discussion with Windsor Chapel or anybody else for buying or selling of the property. I mean, I don't want somebody who attends the chapel or the priest to get upset why you're talking about selling the chapel. There's zero discussion whatsoever. I mean, it's here, but no discussion. And it's always tricky. I mean, no, we are not trying to just slide it through. We do publish it, but it's very difficult to contact every individual. Now, this area is relatively small. If we decide to do it, we can probably do it. But some areas are very large. It's very difficult to contact every person and comment. And my experience, 20 years doing this, is no matter what you do, at the end of the day, somebody comes and says, I didn't know. And that always happens. I mean, not a question. And whatever comes out of whatever is in this document is not final. I mean, these are just the suggestions for the mayor and the council if they so choose to adopt. So even whatever the document recommends is just the recommendations for future. And if it were to take place, they will have a proper hearing about the ordinances, first hearing, second hearing, and everybody will get a chance to comment on that. Specifically about EDU, I have mentioned at the last hearing that I did speak with the mayor of Princeton, and he had some reservations about what it was meant to be and what it developed to be in Princeton. So I'm not in any hurry whatsoever of rushing into ADU until I understand fully what all the ramifications for our town is. So what we'll do is we'll discuss, we'll take all the input, and at the end of it, we'll decide what the board chooses they want to do.
Okay. Okay. So with that said, what we're gonna do is, David's gonna give us an overview of the Dutch Neck study. We'll have some input from the board members. I know I made some comments. I have some stuff I want to talk about, and the other board members will do that too. Then the public will step up and make their comments. The reason why we do the public after is because some of your questions and concerns will be answered in the debate among the board members, and the changes we'll be asking for. So, you know, because a lot of times people say, oh, why can't we speak first? And that's the reason why the public comes after we debate and make the changes we want to make and hear from our professionals. Okay, David, you're up.
Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
I do.
So swear or affirm.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is David Novak. You might remember me from the last master plan document I just spoke about tonight. Tonight, we'll be discussing the draft Dutch Neck Planning and Zoning Study. It is dated October 4th, 2023. It was revised based on some edits and comments provided at the prior August 2nd planning board hearing. Apologize in advance, you're going to hear me repeat myself, but that's only because this is a separate public hearing, so we need to just get everything out on the record again too. Before we go forward, it's important to discuss again what a master plan is. And again, it's a comprehensive, long-term strategic document which is intended to guide the growth and development of the community. It's essentially a roadmap. It identifies where a municipality presently is and where it wishes to be in the future. It develops the general parameters around which development is to occur and where it's to occur. So if you look at our land use plan, it'll identify certain areas for single-family residential, multifamily residential, mixed use, commercial, office spaces. A master plan can be divided into several chapters, otherwise known as elements, which deal on specific topics. Over the past several years, the planning board has been working on updating several of those chapters. I won't necessarily go into that again, but over the past several years, we've adopted a new land use plan, housing element and fair share plan, circulation plan, utilities plan, community facilities plan, open space, farmland, relationship, a new conservation plan, which was just adopted tonight, and a historic preservation plan as well. The mayor brought up something earlier, and I think it's important to put that in perspective as well. A master plan, like I said, is a blueprint. It develops the parameters, it develops general guidelines. It can have specific recommendations in there. The planning or the master plan is essentially the purview of the planning board. So if a planning board adopts a master plan element, it's important to remember that the next day, the day after, there's no immediate zoning changes. So the actual regulations that control land use, setbacks, heights, types of uses, while those decisions should be based on a master plan document, those are all actions by council. And in order to adopt an ordinance, one needs to be prepared, it needs to be introduced by the council, referred back to the planning board, who would look at that to see if it's consistent with our master plan. Specifically, the language talks about whether it's not inconsistent, which is a little bit of a double negative, and then brought back to the council for adoption. So if a master plan document is ever adopted, it does not lead to immediate changes the next day. The other important thing to remember in this process, especially for tonight, is for some planning documents, municipalities are under a deadline. So for example, like a housing element and fair share plan, municipalities may have a deadline imposed on them by a court. That's not the case here. So there's no deadline on this document. So based on board comments, based on public comments, if we need additional time, there's nothing that would require us to necessarily adopt this tonight. So,
David, I'm sorry, is there a deadline when it has to be adopted, completed? Is there?
oh, the only deadlines that you have for a master plan document are this: for a housing plan element and fair share plan. Well, not even all required elements. So for an open space and recreation plan, for example, that's an optional element, but you have to adopt it at least once every 10 years if you want monies to acquire open space properties. So
I just don't want to, we don't rush through anything here.
Mhm.
Trust me, believe me, we don't. Sometimes I wish we would go faster, but we don't. So I just want to make sure that we don't rush through this and adopt something just to make sure we're done by 10 o'clock. A deadline where, hey, this study needs to be completed by a certain date, and you're saying, what I'm hearing is no, right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
I can tell you I've had no discussions. The reason that was included and the reason we'll get to some of those recommendations, quite frankly, that property right now is located in the R2 district. One of the conditional uses of the R2 district are those conditional uses permitted by the RRC district. One of the conditional uses established by that zoning district are open space cluster developments. So the reason that we're looking at this property is because the developer could argue that it could potentially allow for an open space residential cluster development based on current zoning. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at this. We're trying to come up with something that might be a little bit more responsive or suitable for that site. So from a planning and zoning perspective, I want to put that on the record. I was not approached by anybody. I was not approached by any developers. Fact of the matter is, the site permits, or the developer could argue that the site permits for an open space residential cluster development.
Define what that is for the public, please.
Sure. So an open space cluster development, imagine if you have an acre of property. One of the options in the open space cluster development would be to allow for smaller residential lot sizes So say if you have an acre property and typically you're only allowed to have half-acre lots there, it would allow you to shrink the size of those lots in exchange for having an open space area there. So there's certain areas of the township that have been developed like that. That's an open space cluster development. Right now, the way the zoning works is the R2 district establishes the same conditional uses as the RRC district, which is a residential rural conservation district. That district in turn could allow for cluster developments. So the reason that we are looking at those options is because it's currently zoned like that.
And David, are there conditions established for the open space?
There are, yes, yes.
Such as?
Those are established in section 200-174. I can go through them.
I think people didn't have an understanding then of what it is. The
Well,
conditions.
Hunter's Run, which is,
Mhm.
joining the Dutch Neck study area.
Mhm.
When it was built, it was, I guess, half an acre, 3/4 acre properties.
Mhm.
Right, they call that clustering.
Yeah, cluster.
Cluster, right, and then there's open space in between the next development, so that's an example.
Yes. So Alan, if there's no green belt on the site, which I don't believe there is, lot areas of 50,000 square feet.
I'm sorry,
Lot areas of 50,000 square feet when there's no green belt on the property. So that is the reason why we're looking at that site.
but in the alternative, you could also basically indicate that you would not want to.
You could potentially do that as well. And
as
that's,
conditional use in that zone
yes,
and leave it as
Mhm.
is in terms of. open
that's
space.
exactly, yes. So that's definitely an option as well. But I just wanted to jump ahead. I wanted to put in the record though, and reiterate that I was not approached by anybody. So I didn't.
I'm not accusing you of that.
What? Well, there's some comments made prior, which made me think that that was not not was being implied. So I just wanted to put that out there. But so there's the question of why are we doing this, right? This is a optional land use element. Why are we doing this? Why are we going through this agita? This has been a long-standing master plan goal for this community going back to 2002. So long before I was even involved with West Windsor. Not before I was born, but before I graduated high school. So the 2002 master plan, so 21 years ago, it identified Dutch Neck as what it was called at the time, a special neighborhood conservation district. And it recommended the township be surveyed in detail to identify unique land use, bulk, natural, historic, architectural, and other characteristics with the intent of preserving and, where possible, enhancing the positive attributes of those residential clusters. And it noted that one of the ways that you can do that is through historic district assessment. And it also noted that, quote, overlay zoning may be created to address special design standards identified in these areas to protect and preserve this unique heritage. So your 2002 master plan identifies Dutch Neck is this unique area. We should really survey it, look at where we can preserve it, where we can enhance it. Maybe it's through an overlay zone. 6 years later, in 2008, the township adopts a re-examination report. And put simply, a re-examination report is designed to examine or re-examine, take another look at a master plan to see how it might need to be tweaked or changed based on changes at the national, state, and local level. So imagine a re-examination report is a document that looks at a master plan and says, this is what's changed, and this is, because of that, what we think you need to look at. One of the changes that was proffered by the 2008 re-examination report, once again, dealt with Dutch Neck, and that was to specifically that the quote, the zoning of the older core section of Dutch Neck should be revised to reflect actual conditions. So there was acknowledgement in the 2008 re-examination report that all of the zoning districts above Dutch Neck really might not reflect the actual development pattern there. 2018, we adopt another re-examination report. And that essentially reiterates the recommendation that was offered by the 2008 re-examination report that the zoning of the older core section of Dutch Neck Village should be revised to reflect actual conditions. Then in 2020, we adopted a new land use plan. And that land use plan created a new land use category near the intersection of Village Road and South Mill Road. Land use category is a description of an area of land that helps set some of the general parameters for how we should think about zoning in that area. The 2020 plan noted, quote, It was created in recognition of the unique and varied development pattern of the Dutch Neck community. And you all know that. The sizes of residential lots there range from anywhere as small as 5,000 square feet to up to, and while it's a residential area, it does contain a lot of significant non-residential land uses. Historic and unique development pattern of Dutch Neck, and to adequately address the reasonable expectations of homeowners in regard to modern home improvements. So again, in summary, this study was not being conducted to a specific recommendation by an individual or a property owner, or because a piece of land is for sale, which something is for sale from what we know. It's being conducted because the township's planning boards over the past 21 years now have recognized that the existing development pattern in Dutch Neck does not match up with the zoning there. So the zoning has separate requirements or requirements that a lot of the dwellings there, a lot of the properties, because of their sizes, will not be able to meet. And when we studied the area, we found that there was a disconnect, that some of the zoning criteria of the Dutch Neck area doesn't meet the actual on-the-ground conditions that properties are in, based on what was offered by the 2020 land use plan. So roughly goes from North County Squire Lane, to County Squire Lane to the north. To the west, it extends to La Park Phase 2. To the south, we go to about the mid-block of South Mill Road. And to the east, we go to Dutch Neck School and Dutch Neck Estates. When you walk through Dutch Neck, you can feel that it has a predominantly residential feel to it. And that's because most of the properties in that study area are residential in character. So 86.1% of the lots in Dutch Neck are all residential. But there are a number of non-residential properties that are pretty significant in size. So there's not that many, but when you look at all of them added up, it's about 42.8% of the total study area. So we divided this study into 6 different sections. The first was to identify a goal and policies that were designed for the Dutch Neck area. The next section was to provide a brief history of the Dutch Neck area going back to the 1750s. That next section, section 3, then jumps from today and how it's presently developed. And then section 4 discusses the zoning of the area, which includes 4 separate zoning districts. It's the R20, the R20A, the R30, and the R2 district. Those are the 4 zoning districts that encompass what we call Dutch Neck. Section 5 offers a zoning analysis, and it looks at the requirements of those zoning districts and then sees what levels of conformity exist in the area. And then based on that, section 6 offers a number of recommendations. It might be helpful to go into some of the findings of that zoning analysis, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of detail in the report about what was matching up and what wasn't. We see a lot of conformance with, permitted uses. We see a lot of conformance with rear yards. Districts actually had a conforming lot size. 21 properties didn't. So almost half of the properties located in the R20 district, which are in Dutch Neck, don't meet the minimum lot size requirement. 26 properties don't meet the minimum lot width requirement. 22 properties don't meet the front yard requirement. 21 properties don't meet the side yard requirement. 23 properties don't meet an FAR requirement. FAR is short for floor area ratio, which means it's a convoluted calculation where you take the total amount of floor area from a dwelling and you divide that by the lot area. So if a house has 2,000 square feet of total floor area, and it discounts garages and certain basement areas, but if it has 2,000 square feet of floor area on a 10,000 square foot lot, it's got a floor area ratio of 20%.
Hey, David, just really quick, can you tell the public why we do this kind of like assessment of conforming, non-conforming? Could, basically because then someone comes in and they build some house or on a piece of property that's conforming and it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. And if you could just kind of go through that really quick.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you have a property that's not conforming in a certain aspect, say it's an older house, it's built right up to the property line, and they say if they want to add an addition to that house, there's a very good likely chance, because their lot size is either too small, the house is too close, they already have too much impervious coverage or improvement coverage because the lot is so small. Any type of improvement they want to do on that house is going to require a homeowner to file an application with the zoning board of adjustment. What that does is that it essentially increases the costs to homeowners. So if you want to add a modest addition, if you want to, square off the corner of a house and you have a lot that's undersized, you might have to submit and file an application, which includes application fees and escrow, to the zoning board of adjustment, schedule a hearing date, provide notice, pay an escrow account for me to do a review on it, and then the board gets to vote yes or no on it. What this report does, or attempts to do at least, is to look at that zoning analysis. So where lots are conforming, where they're not conforming. And a lot of the recommendations we offer try to tweak the zoning there, not to get every property in conformance, because that's going to be impossible, but to get lots a little bit more in conformance. So hypothetically, if somebody has a improvement coverage of 40% because their lot is really small and they want to add an addition, the zoning board will look at an application and see, well, you're only allowed a improvement coverage of X. You're going up incrementally from that. It's really tough for us to approve this. If we're able to adjust the zoning requirements to get properties more in conformance, that difference between what they're proposed versus what they're allowed isn't as great. And that means the burden of that variance isn't as common pattern there. So that way, if a homeowner does have to make an application, they're either able to comply easier. The first recommendation is really more of a housekeeping item. So you have 1 and 2, 1-8 lot 45. Those properties are separated. So Hunters Run development, they're a part of it, but the rest of the development is located in the R28 district. These sites are not for some reason. I don't know what the leftover was, but they are currently located in. The second category of recommendation that we have deals with it's a proposed R2B district. That encapsulates a number of sites located on South Mill Road, mostly to the north of Village Road West. Those sites and those properties are, I'll read them out loud, 138, 136 South Mill Road. Those properties, specifically the ones along the westerly side of South Mill Road, are presently not conforming to the R2 district's requirements for lot width, front yard setback, and a side yard setback. So those lots are located, or those properties are narrower lots than what the R2 district typically requires. Their front yards are closer than what the R2 requires, and their side yards are also closer than what the R2 requires. There's also another property, which is block 21.07 lot 73. That is located at 131 South Mill Road. That contains a bungalow and an accessory apartment as well. So we offer a number of recommendations for that zoning district. Specifically, to place them in a new R2B district that would establish mostly the same bulk standards as the R2 district, with the exception of a reduced front yard setback requirement and a reduced side yard setback requirement. So that's an attempt to more closely match what the existing development pattern there is. Another recommendation that we had in there, when we look at the depths of these lots, they're really deep. So one of the recommendations that we had, due to the nature of those deep lots and due to the nature of 131 South Mill Road already having historically this type of use on there, is to evaluate and explore the propriety of what's called an accessory dwelling unit, ADU for short. An ADU is a smaller independent residential dwelling unit located on the same lot as a standalone, i.e. detached, single-family dwelling. So you'll often hear them called accessory apartments, secondary suites, granny flats. The name I hear all the time is mother-daughter. People keep on requesting mother-daughters. An ADU, you can potentially locate it in a converted portion of an existing dwelling. It could be in addition to a new home or an existing home, or in a new standalone accessory structure. So, think of the garage on the first floor and an accessory apartment above that. Not to bring back images of Arthur Fonzarelli, but when he lived with the Cunninghams, something like that. So we make it a recommendation that the township consider that type of use there. Again, these are a limited number of properties, very deep. several already developed with historic properties there. So the recommendation is to examine that, and if the township chooses to ultimately allow for ADUs, come up with design standards that they be designed to reflect the historic nature of that hamlet, and then restrict them to family members only by way of deed restriction. Moving on to the next category.
Before you get off of
Yes.
this topic. The whole basic idea in the neighborhoods, I think you identified one property which may have one.
Mhm.
One property doesn't mean, from my perspective, anything. And the fact that a lot is greater in depth, again, lots. I think there are a number of problems with that.
Mhm.
Number one, we're not satisfying affordable housing
For now, but yes.
for now.
And you wouldn't be using
Right,
these. Yeah.
but you're not going to be satisfying it with the ADU.
No, you would
unless
not
you
be.
Put those restrictions on it. You don't know what the next round is going to require. And you don't know what the next round is going to require in terms of.
And these wouldn't be proposed to be deed restricted anyway. In terms of
But-
income.
They're supposed to be deed restricted. There are a lot of,
No, you're thinking of the accessory apartment program. This is an accessory dwelling unit. There's a different things.
yeah, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
The other problem is the fact that you have one house, let's say, behind another, if you have a long, narrow lot.
Mhm.
Okay. It can't be seen, hopefully, from the street, but that poses, I think, additional security problems for the police. If a policeman is making a patrol on a road, he can't see what's going on behind the house.
Mhm.
He's only looking at the house in front. So there could be that type of an issue. But I think more than anything, to have these buildings spring up in the backyards of other homes, I think is an intrusion upon the adjacent property owners. So quite frankly, I don't think the ADU, number one, should be even part of the study, because the study originally was, stated to look at existing conditions and more reflect the bulk and yard standards, which for the most part you've done. So from my perspective, this should not even be in here.
Well, I will support that too, because I'm not a fan of this. I didn't see why we really needed to integrate this into this study. Single family homes, you're doing like a new version of, a two-family house, only instead of side by side, now you've got a separate small house
Mhm.
in the backyard. And then try deed restricting it and enforcing that. I mean, we just don't have the resources really to enforce that. We're more complaint based on our enforcement. So I just don't see, I don't see the need in putting this in.
mean-
I'm not gonna go in that direction. All of a sudden, we're gonna have a second house in everyone's backyard, because, if you do it for one area, then another area wants it.
Well,
and it
that
grows.
was what I was going to say. If you do it
Right.
for this area, let's say I have a lot that, has 300 feet going back. Why can't I be included in that? And it just opens up a lot of, I think, situations that you would really want to avoid.
And then I think there's also where we always talk in the news about equity and all these, those type of issues.
Mhm.
And so why should someone only be able to have a relative in that ADU unit?
Mhm.
And not be able to put a college student or somebody else, just a regular tenant. I mean, you get into all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Just really quick. This is a study of a certain area. David's coming up with solutions, possibilities, but we're here to debate what the recommendations or possibilities are. Now, not every recommendation could be a good recommendation, but that's why we're here to debate it. Alan doesn't like ADUs, you agree? I kind of agree with you too. And maybe the other people want ADUs, maybe the public loves ADUs, but we're here to debate that and get input from everybody, and then we'll make a decision. Hey, ADUs need to come out or ADUs need to go in. But we'll assess that. That's why we're here.
My thoughts on this are that similar to how the mayor verbalized it earlier, is that I don't think this review of the planning and zoning study for Dutch Neck is the proper place to deal with this bigger issue of these accessory dwelling units. And I would want to have more education and community conversation on the matter if it as a community. And I just don't think that in the context of tonight and Dutch Neck, this is the time or place to do that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the extent of my education on ADUs, accessory dwelling units, has been a couple of New York Times articles, and they're profiling places like Portland and Seattle that are very different from West Windsor. So I don't feel that I've had a complete, education on this. And that's why I want more community education on it. The pros, the cons, the community impact, the why question. Why would we even look at?
I think that's key.
Let me finish. Why would we even consider this? What are the benefits? What are the negative effects? We often do that with a zoning consideration. What are the benefits of a change? What are the negative consequences of the change? So I think there needs to be a time
To have the board and everybody weigh in on the accessory dwelling, because we're here now, so you might as well finish the whole conversation. So I don't know if anybody had any other feelings on this one way or the other.
Well, we can say, we can all vote and say wrong, but we're not gonna make a decision based on solely on what we decide. The public has to weigh in.
So before we forget the issue, so perhaps Jerry could take a note of what we feel, is an important issue. And then after we hear the public, we can weigh that.
Right. Yep. Okay. So just continue on that.
So
Okay.
I was just going to add one other thing. So the recommendations that you had made with regards to the bulk and yard standards, those actually reflect what's happening in that neighborhood now.
Yes, generally speaking. So the way we
I-
did this analysis was essentially looking at online GIS data and going through lot by lot, doing our best to measure front, side, rear yard setbacks, as well as measuring improvement coverage. The NJDEP provides a shapefile that identifies improvement coverage. So what I would do is overlay that information on top of an aerial, make the adjustments where I could, and then take measurements from there. So it's not going to be survey accurate.
Right, I mean,
but
that's the only way you could possibly. Do it,
Exactly, yeah,
With the
yeah.
information that's out there.
Yeah.
Other than doing an actual survey, which is insane.
which would be about,
we can't-
good luck, A, finding a surveyor right now, and then B, you'd be making that person's, year by having to do that many surveys.
Okay.
Before I move on, was there anything else with the R2B district with recommendations? I know we'll open up to the
No.
public at the end, but
Right, so we're gonna intensely review the subject of ADUs after we hear from the public. And then we'll make some decisions on that, but I don't think there's anything else.
So, David, let me just put out a scenario to you.
Mhm.
And I will use Dutch Neck as the example. Okay, I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. Montgomery County, Maryland, in Bethesda is unincorporated. All the planning decisions are made at the county level. It's very distant, Rockville. And they might not really know the neighborhoods well. So, and I'm distressed every time I go back to Bethesda, where I see property owners just remove the house that's there and put their own little castle. I'm amplifying this. On
McMansion
the
of sorts,
property
yes.
that meets the bulk standards
Mhm.
of the zone, yet looks totally different from the rest of the neighborhood or the community. So my broad question to you, as we look at zones and zone changes, is what is to prevent a future homeowner in Dutch Neck to take down the house on the property they bought and create their own house the way they want to design it. That might be totally not in concert with the neighborhood, but they meet all the bulk standards.
Okay, very good
what-
question.
What,
Design.
what regulatory, what, if they meet all the bulk standards
Mhm.
and health and safety and they can get their building permit, what is to prevent such homeowner from doing what I've described?
Okay, very good question. And just to reiterate that question, if there's a property developed with an older house, and we often call this the tear down phenomenon, property developed with an older house that has a lot of charm to it. Somebody buys a house, they decide, you know what, I want a bedroom with closets in it. I'm ripping this thing down, ripping it down, building a new one. What would be preventing them from doing that and building a McMansion in its place? Currently, the only.
David,
Yes,
could you just explain to the public what bulk standards are?
exactly.
We've
Yes.
referred to them many times.
Yes, so bulk standards would be the zoning regulations that control the general shape and envelope that a building can go into, right? So we have bulk standards that dictate front yard setback, which is how far your house needs to be from the front lot line, rear yard setbacks, which is how far the house needs to be from the rear yard lot line, side yard setbacks. We also have bulk standards for improvement coverage, which is how much actual improvement you can have in the grounds, as well as that FAR, floor area ratio, which is how much house and garage you can have in your house property as well. Curtis's question.
And height,
Mhm.
and height standards.
Oh, and height, thank you. And that's a little important as well. Height standards as well. So that way you're not getting a 5-foot story, single family dwelling right next to you. The Curtis's question is right now, we don't have much that would prevent that. So if somebody buys an older house and they want to demolish it and build a modern house there, down to Cape May. Obviously, Cape May has a certain look to it. New house gets built. They have certain criteria for how that house needs to look. That's what a design standard is. It would basically control the outward appearance of that dwelling as well. That's a design option that municipalities can adopt. We recommend that be examined in the next zoning district I'll bring up, which is the Dutch Neck Center. That's really the core of the area. We have design standards currently for, we have some limited design standards currently for either multifamily developments or new subdivision applications. So if a new subdivision comes in and somebody's building 3-4 houses, we have design standards that say that all the houses can't look the same. But we have no design standards that would say the house has to look a certain historical way, whether it be Dutch colonial, mid-century modern, ranch, whatever it might be. So right now, that's a very long-winded, and I apologize, way of answering your question. Right now, we have no design standards that would prevent that. In the next zoning district, which I'll talk, we make that consideration, but it certainly is a balancing act, right? So some people really love the idea of maintaining that type of look. Other people, when they spend a lot of money in a house and they want to knock it down and build something new, don't like being told what their house wants to look like. So it's a balancing act. There's pluses and minuses, obviously, to both.
Thank you. You good on that?
For now.
Okay. Okay, continue.
Okay, so the next zoning district that we recommend creating would be what we're calling the Dutch Neck Hamlet zoning district. So not a creative name, but an accurate name. This is really focused on the core of Dutch Neck at the intersection of South Mill Road, Village Road West, and Village Road East. It's where we have a number of non-conforming properties exist, including several residential properties which don't conform to the requirements of the R20 district, the R28 district, and the R30 district. So it's very odd when you walk up and down Village Road and you walk up and down South Mill Road, you're not aware that you're walking through about 3 or 4 zoning districts there. Obviously, they're invisible, but all those houses are all located in different zoning districts with different requirements. What this district is trying to do is to better reflect some of the development characteristics of those existing properties. Specifically, if you're looking at Village Road at East and you're going from South Mill Road towards the school, you get a lot of smaller dwellings there. Not a lot of those dwellings actually meet the minimum lot sizes established by those districts. This proposed zoning district would also incorporate the Dutch Neck Presbyterian School, the Presbyterian School, Dutch Neck Presbyterian Church, the Christian Education Building associated with that, the Dutch Neck Presbyterian Church Cemetery, Windsor Chapel, Dutch Neck School, the Board of Ed property, which is in the former Dutch Neck Chapel, the West Windsor Fire Company #1, and Dutch Neck Veterans Park. So in order to better represent or in consideration of the unique and historical nature of that corridor, we're proposing this new Dutch Neck Hamlet district. And it's envisioned that the residential bulk standards of that district would more closely align to the area's existing residential development pattern. So we developed a number of different proposed zoning standards for that area, which again, are not going to put every property in conformance, but it's going to bring properties a little bit more into conformance. It's also recommended that the provisions of the district allow for greater design flexibility when encouraging properties in there. It'd be nice to somehow try to maintain those, but also allow for maybe an improvement to them. One of the means to do so would be to establish a larger floor area ratio and improvement coverage for existing dwellings. However, if you were to knock down that dwelling and build a new one, you would be limited to smaller FARs and improvement coverage. So a mechanism that would try to allow for homeowners to expand those historic dwellings and try to keep them through some sort of added benefit. There's also a recommendation in there that the town should consider more flexible front yard setback requirements. So none of the properties right now meet the front yard setback requirement. I mean, there's houses that are basically right up on the street. One of the zoning criteria I've seen in other municipalities that have worked well is, right, so if you have a lot that's required to have a 40-foot front yard setback, and it's really only 15 feet away, or it's proposed to be 15 feet away,
I was just gonna say that in terms of lot averaging, a lot of ordinances will actually go beyond 200 feet. They would go, let's say, on the block.
yes, yeah, there's not a
Which
lot of
might
different,
make some more sense.
yeah, I've seen both ways. I've seen that you'd have to take the average of basically the entire street frontage.
Yeah.
And you've also, I've seen it where it's only you're taking one or the other. So either one works, but there's different ways to skin that proverbial cat.
All right, so in terms of your greater design flexibility to encourage property owners to retain their existing home, that red line.
Okay.
So you're talking about larger FAR for the existing dwelling units. If they were to knock it down, then it would revert back to a smaller FAR.
Yes.
Are there any other suggestions that you're thinking of?
Currently for FAR and improvement coverage, that's it for now, as well as adjusting some of the side yard setbacks, front yard setback requirements. Those you can see in table 10 on page 33. So lowering the minimum lot area size, lot width requirements, all those bulk standards, changing those as well.
And you also note that you would like to establish pre-existing two-family dwellings as a permitted use.
I was getting to that one next.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yep.
Go
So
explain.
one of the other recommendations that we have is to establish pre-existing two-family dwellings as a permitted use. So there's a number of pre-existing two-family dwellings in the area. Those are all what we call pre-existing non-conforming uses. So way back when, before zoning area, and now all of a sudden that two-family dwelling is a pre-existing non-conforming use that existed. That is that one of the goals we have in zoning is to eliminate pre-existing non-conforming uses and bring everything into conformance. So if you have a existing or pre-existing two-family dwelling, and say you wanted to add a bump out in the back or an additional, room for a family room or something like that, you would have to make a special application to the zoning board of adjustment. It's called D variance for an expansion of a non-conforming use. That's different from a typical bulk variance, right? So if you build a house and you need a front yard setback or your fence is too high, that's called a C variance. And when you appear in front of the board, has a less burden of proof, and there's typically 7 members of the board, only 4 need to vote yes. If there's only 5 members of the board that show up, only 3 need to vote yes. You only need a majority of the quorum that shows up. For a D variance, it's a heightened burden of proof. So you need 5 affirmative votes no matter what. So if there's 7 members there, you need 5 votes. If there's 6 members only present that day, you need 5 votes. If you have 5 members that day, you are not going forward with that vote that night because you need all 5 members to agree with you. So it's a heightened burden of proof, and they're typically harder variances to get. Neck Hamlet is to allow those pre-existing non-conforming uses to legally continue, identify them as permitted use.
So the question I have then, if they come in, let's say we make them, that they requirements for that set, if they wanted to extend, correct?
Yes,
They don't have to go to the zoning board.
if there's no bulk variances that are associated, yes. If there's still a bulk variance, then they have to go in front of the zoning board. If it burn, oh, I'm sorry, what was the other question? Okay. that's fine.
So you're saying they could build bigger if they knock down, make compliant,
Okay.
2-family homes? And what if they decided they wanted to knock it down and build a brand new
No, that's,
2-family?
no,
They
that's-
can't.
No, you're not allowed to build a new, the adoption of whatever ordinance. And we do that
Right.
actually for, funny enough, veterinary clinics in some of their zoning districts.
How many actual existing 2 families are in that area? Just out of curiosity,
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 altogether.
yeah, so. Thank you.
okay. Great.
Okay. So then moving on to one of our other recommendations. So what we're looking to do is identify houses of worship, public and private schools, and facilities owned and operated by the West Windsor Plainsboro Board of Education. Identify those as permitted uses rather than conditional uses. So this is another thing I have to backtrack and explain. A permitted use is a use that's permitted as of right. So if you're located in, the permitted uses would be a single family residential dwelling. A conditional use is a use, one of those conditions, then you have to go in front of the zoning board of adjustment for a conditional use variance. And that's another one of those non-residential uses currently identified as conditional uses. And most of those conditional uses don't meet the conditions to remedy that situation. One of the other recommendations to identify public or semi-public facility as a permitted use. So right now that we have a West Windsor fire station within Dutch Neck area. That's very ambiguous about whether or not that's actually permitted or not permitted. This is trying to make that a permitted use in the district. We also offer 2 specific recommendations or considerations for the board. The first is the Board of Education Transportation Building. That's located in the former Dutch Neck Chapel. We heard feedback that there has been some negative impacts of the use of that property. Essentially, it's an eyesore. You have a lot of cars loading in the back, buses, creates noise. So this is more of a general recommendation for that site, is to try to encourage some sort of additional buffering at that site to prevent that. The other item that we talked about is Windsor Chapel already.
Wait, David, one moment, I'm sorry. Regarding the transportation building, that's a school-owned property, right?
It is a school-owned property.
No, is there?
Nothing that this board could do to force them to do that. That's what you're asking.
Thank you.
Yes.
Those are the words I was trying to
Mhm.
utter, but I want to say it nicely.
No, you're right. There's nothing that this board can do, but we wanted to include it in this document anyway, because it was a concern that was brought up and it was something that we wanted to reflect. But
Okay.
I guess the only thing we could do is to send recommendations to the Board of Ed
yes,
to buffer it. Apparently there is some kind of a fence on one side of it, of the parking lot, but it's not.
it's, yeah, it's not,
That require an ordinance change, like if council had certain wording to say that they must do this, then don't they have to do it?
No,
don't know if it'll apply, yeah.
No.
The other recommendation we discussed briefly, and I think we're going to discuss it more in depth right now, is Windsor Chapel. So once again, I want to stress, was not approached by anybody, no developer, no builder. But looking at the existing zoning of the site in the R2 and just looking at this from an aerial, because there's a significant portion of that site which is not developed, it's undeveloped. You look at this and you realize that it's susceptible to potential. Recommendation is to evaluate the propriety, provide an additional type of housing for the community. A lot of the houses we see right now that get built, it's either multifamily or it's a large house. trying to look at smaller single-family dwellings. And establishing some sort of open space requirement as well. So those are the recommendations that we have for the Dutch Neck Hamlet area. So I think now would be the time to discuss those recommendations.
Not that, again, not that we can do anything about it, but if the Windsor Chapel was to be developed into open spaced, age-restricted housing, that would take away the parking lot option, the parking options for the school for overflow event parking, correct?
Potentially, yes, depending on what that development or design looks like, it could. I had not heard about the overflow parking issue. So I'm kind of unclear. Are they parking in the parking lot or are they parking?
To neighbor's yard.
Got it.
And then at night, it's very difficult to tell when the lot ends and the yard starts. There's no demarcation.
Here, obviously.
No,
There's
no.
not a lot we could do regarding the school and their arrangements with a private property.
That similar kind of treatment, and you go over to St. David's. Again, we don't have a housing plan.
1,500.
How many?
Yes, yeah.
1,500.
1,500.
Fifteen hundred.
Affordable units.
Affordable units, just.
No,
I'm sorry.
no, not 1,500. That's the obligation.
1,500 affordable units were in our, yeah, that was our.
And-
obligation.
Right, but we get a credit of 375 units.
Oh, yes, you're
So-
correct, yes.
So that, but the total number of housing that would go along with that.
Within the
is
thousands,
How many?
within the thousands, I would imagine.
Like over 3,000?
Would be a ratio basically of 3 to 1, because
Yeah, so let's say 3,000.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of units. That's a lot of school children.
Mhm.
And again, there are impacts of every house that you put on.
Mhm.
So my preference at this point would be to take that out of the RRC zone and don't have a reference from this zone, referring to that.
So, yeah, that would be, if whatever the board decides, the zoning needs to get cleaned up in order to make that more clear. Because again,
Yeah.
right now, the zoning would allow for some sort of.
Yeah,
cluster development there.
exactly. But again, the other institutions would follow suit. Hey,
Mhm.
there's a big piece of farmland next to St. David's.
Mhm.
Why couldn't they put a cluster development in?
Let me ask you.
Well, what I always say is that with planning and zoning, Alan, you can,
Why are they getting it and not us?
and I can tell you one of the favorite thing, I will agree to disagree, but
Okay,
with the legal precedent, at
Let me,
least,
let
I
me
think
ask
we're on
you,
the same
let me
page.
ask you a question.
Yes.
If Windsor Chapel was sold tomorrow, we just didn't know about it, but there's something in the works and it gets sold tomorrow, what could be built there, developed there that's conforming to the current zoning?
So, boy, that's a big question.
Yeah, very big question.
I would have to take a look at the zone. So that site is located in the R2 district.
So,
The R2 district allows for any use that's permitted in the RRC district. The RRC district allows for single-family dwellings, home occupations, public and nonprofit parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, farming activities, community residences for the development of the disabled, community shelters for victims of domestic violence, community residence for the West Windsor. Would not allow for a veterinary clinic, would have to exist prior to that. There's also a number of conditional uses there. Without doing a zoning analysis, I can't tell you whether or not there'd be.
let me rephrase the question. What could be developed or put there? And
Wouldn't be able to do a rough estimate
that
just
size?
because.
well,
Yeah,
if it's 100 acres there, which it's not, but and each lot and the conforming lot size is 1 acre, you could put 100 houses there, right?
What about the?
Yes and no, because you still need to factor
Okay.
in certain other
Like roadways?
infrastructural improvements like.
He can't
Okay.
do that off the
I'm-
top of
I'm-
his head.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
He'd literally have to
I'm
sketch
just
it,
trying to
sketch it out.
gauge in my head. That property gets sold,
Mhm.
how many houses are going there? Because the developer's gonna come in and he's gonna wanna put, okay, what can I put here that's gonna make me the most money?
Mhm.
It's
Of
not gonna be
course.
an open space with park, I can tell you that.
No,
So it'll be some kind of housing units. We don't allow for two-family homes, so it won't be two-family homes. But it could be something there that, that's my concern, that it'll just, it'll really, make that too busy there.
So if you took that out of the RRC, well, you don't have it as referenced to the RRC zone, that essentially whatever the zoning permits today would be permitted on there. So you'd have conventional single-family lots, which would basically face the street, and they're not going to be intruding into the backyards
Right.
of the homes that are
Mhm.
currently
Well,
fronting.
look, maybe,
Village
maybe
Road
that's
East.
what the right solution is. I don't know. You know, you can take it out of the zoning district, but you can't remove it from the neighborhood. It's there.
Right,
Right, so,
but again, the impact you have to really look at what the impact is.
Yeah,
And
okay.
the impact being homes behind homes that have been used to
Right.
open space forever, even,
Right.
you know. And that to me is a concern if I were a resident.
Now, David, but clusters are permitted in the R2 by reference to the RRC if they meet all the conditional use standards, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So one way or the other, we have to clean up the zoning.
Mhm.
Yeah. For that property you're talking about, clean it up for just that property?
When I say clean it up, it make the zoning clear. Yeah, so it's either, are we allowing clusters or not allowing clusters? That's
Exactly.
essentially.
So that would be another item for Jerry to bring up before we forget. Yeah.
Well, there's one other zoning recommendation we make for specifically for Pinewood Court. So we included this in the study. For Pinewood Court is not a part of Dutch Neck, but it is currently located within the R2 district. It's part of Dutch Neck Estates. The rest of that area is located in the R30. So our recommendation is to rezone this dwelling to the R30 to match the rest of that neighborhood. And otherwise, you're just gonna have a little orphan lot with an orphan zone by itself.
Have you notified the owner of that property?
What was that?
Have you notified the owner of that property that you're thinking?
No, these are recommendations, so there'd be no specific notice at this time.
I mean, as I said, it is just recommendations. Even if all of
Right.
us agree 100%, nothing happens. Unless the council and the mayor passes the ordinance and other things. So there's a lot of steps.
We would not be placing them in a more owner's zoning district though. So if the R2 district requires a minimum lot size of 1 acre, the R30 district, which is the zoning district that the rest of that community was developed under, is 30,000 square feet. So really,
I thought you said earlier, the minimum lot size would be 50,000 square feet.
no, I don't think Dutch
That
Neck
doesn't
Estate
make
was a
any
cluster
sense.
development.
I'm sorry?
This is Dutch Neck Estates. I don't know.
I'm gonna change it up a little bit. You know, I said the public was gonna speak after we heard from the professional and the board was gonna debate, but I don't know, it's 8:39, it's ending at 9, we try to get out here at 9:30, but I don't want to rush through this, and I really would like to hear from the public, so I'd like to open it to the public to come up and speak. And then, you know, some of the things that you may say are probably in our notes, and you'll answer our questions. So
So
at this,
Do you want the public to speak on the entire study or just what we?
Yeah, I would say questions and comments, right, on everything?
sorry,
Questions and comments on the entirety of the study?
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever they, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why they're here. I think what we did is we educated a lot of the public, you know, into what's going on. And I think maybe we gave you some information that maybe you didn't understand or didn't know prior. So I hope we did that because that was the intention. And with that said, you know, maybe we answered some of your questions and maybe, you know, maybe it's gonna reduce phone and introduce yourself, state your name and address, you'll be sworn in. And we'll like to hear what you have to say.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give be the truth?
Yes,
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Donald Ed McQueen, MACQUEEN,
And address?
33 Barrington Drive. So I'm with Windsor Chapel. I'm a elder. I'm on the elder board. I've been there 15 years as a congregant, and then I've served on the board since 2020. I did live in Dutch Neck for 10 years, but we moved to Barrington a couple of years ago. So I can affirm what the gentleman said. There, we had several hundred kids come out and run around for an egg hunt. So it's really important to us. I had a couple questions I wrote down asked, but I did want to ask just as an aside, when the RRC are incorporated in the R2, like that's on other pages, there's a list of the permitted uses. That's not actually listed, right? So it's incorporated, but I would think it would be laid out there as one of the permitted uses.
Well, it's not a permitted use. It's a conditional use.
Well, there's conditional uses on the next page. Is it listed there?
Yes. Under the R2 district, if you look at the first top one, it would be open space clusters.
So if you make it, and if you make open space clusters an alternative use, that's just in addition to house of worship. So.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
so they're not instead of or replace of, but it just kind of overlays the house of worship use.
Yes, the idea would be to make the house of worship a permitted or to just eliminate that entirely. So it's.
Yeah. Okay. No, we've had zero discussions about doing anything in terms of selling the property, so that's not our plan whatsoever. And with the proposal to evaluate that would apply to the entire property. So if there's an alternative use of the cluster lot, that's not just the field portion, that would apply to, you're not bifurcating the property, right? It's the
It would
whole
apply
thing.
to the entirety of that. Yeah. Property.
That lot. Okay. Those were my plan questions. Did you have any questions about Windsor Chapel while I'm here?
No.
Do you have any questions regarding?
Okay.
You are included in our historic preservation plan too, so.
All right. Yeah. And
And,
the
yeah.
parking lot thing, just let me comment on that. The grass, if people overflow, I think that's still ours. That's not a neighbor. So we have a lot of parking spots. We have the gravel lot and then the pave lot. I'd be very surprised if people overflow to the grass past that. But if they do, that's Windsor Chapel. They're not on a neighbor's lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's no fencing or no demarcation.
They'll park, they'll cut through the people's houses that live on Village Road East.
Yeah.
There's a culvert there, like they're crossing a ditch to do that.
I mean, I've never tried to do that, so.
What they were saying. Or not, I was wrong.
That'd be a
Okay,
long walk.
never mind.
Yeah.
Is anybody cutting through properties? Okay.
We were trying to protect the neighbor's property from being driven on and parked on. Okay, thank you. Okay, please, anybody want to step up and state your name and address for the record? You'd be sworn in.
If you could raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony about to give be the truth.
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Thomas Raday, Raday. Excuse me, I'm hard of hearing and I have enunciated a little bit. Actually, you did quite well, Vice Chair.
He's very loud.
Well, he's perfectly good.
Enunciate.
You do that
Exactly.
too.
And usually I get accused of talking too quickly, so thank you.
So I live at 409 Village East, I believe is number 47 on the list. Most of what you're doing here, I really support and I like. My concern is about anything that could happen with Windsor Chapel, which is directly behind my property. Joyful. It's really wonderful. So I appreciate everything. I don't mind that it's behind the house, but it can be tough on the road. Anything that we can do to prevent, I'm excited about. The reason you do adopt this recommendation and it does end up becoming a possibility, I would hope that in the recommendation, you would put some kind of berm or some kind of landscaping so that I can still live the dream that there's some nature behind my home and not a hive, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick comment, require some landscaping buffer to protect the neighbors. I mean, from every development, your name and.
You can raise your right hand. Please swear or affirm the testimony about to give be the truth. If you could say your full name.
Sue Applegate, 215 South Mill. I just want to respond to the representative from the church and show him pictures that I have of the parking that does go on in that field. The board can look at these also.
I distributed to the board, the pictures.
You did?
that our egg hunt,
No, this is Halloween. This is just this week.
oh, this says May 12th.
This is May 12th. This is field day.
Oh,
Field day at the school. This is Halloween. Just 2, 3 days ago. This is the extra.
So it really is.
It is new.
Grass, yeah.
I've had a car drive through my yard out to the front of Belleville Road. It's about 4 years ago. But it actually drove from the parking lot right through my yard, into my yard, out into the road. In front of my house.
Yeah.
And
So
we,
you're saying this is like obviously well past the ground a lot.
oh, right, what's that?
Back there, yeah.
This is the incident, and I'll show them to board just around all of you. But we've had a call, we've had cars coming onto the property, turning around, please have to direct. So yes, parking is an issue. I'll pass it around the board.
And then everybody.
What number on the map is your house? Just so I know. What number on the map is your house?
My house isn't in the village. My house is at the end of South Mill Road, but it's on the opposite side. It's not included in that. The double house across the street is, but not my house. I'm right across from that.
So you would show me this, where they drive.
I can show you that.
Yeah. That's.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
And I think we're gonna have, just a second, sir. I think we're gonna have marked as an exhibit, and it will be basically P1, should be the photographs that be the truth.
Yes,
So sworn or affirmed. Could you please state your full name and spell your last name?
12 South Mill Road.
Thank you.
So all I want to say is just to piggyback on the beginning, the very beginning of this conversation, the sort of to comment on the process. And I know the challenges of communicating with people to talk to, and it might be more challenging for larger areas of West Windsor, but to just think of ways that you can facilitate fair process, transparency, so people are feeling these kinds of conversations are happening, that people feel a voice, that they're being heard. And I think if you spend more time up front, even if it's more work, putting things in mailboxes or whatever, you're going to find it's actually doing that proactive stuff at the beginning. Then you're going to have less issues. West Windsor website to look for the latest post. And so if there's other ways that you can let people know when you're making decisions or considering decisions that are affecting them, people, they want to feel like they have a say, that they have a voice. So that's what I would encourage you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could raise your right hand. Swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give be the truth. So sworn or affirmed. And you,
David Donnie, 209 South Mill Road. If cluster housing is a conditional use under the R2, why don't, and we would eliminate this little hornet's nest that's been stirred up here over the.
Basically crafts all the permitted uses and the conditional uses from scratch. So, if clean up, I'm using that phrase, clean up the zoning there to try to eliminate that type of conditional use. The only reason why I wouldn't recommend necessarily an R20 district is because what we're trying to do is get that property, we're trying to get some sort of consistency in zoning there. So we are recommending that Dutch Neck community zone there. If that property was in an R20 district, it would be the only property located in an R20 district around the area. So planning and zoning wise, it just wouldn't be super consistent, but we can accomplish that same goal that you're recommending through creating a whole new zoning district for the site.
For that particular site.
It would be for that particular, well, it would be encompassing basically the core of the Dutch Neck area where houses of worship would be identified as a permitted use.
So I don't see anything here in any of the paperwork that would indicate the existing conditions would be. So how can we, as the residents here,
can outline that in the document itself?
So what I would ask the board to do then is to table tonight this particular plan, since it has this hornet's nest problem here, and come back to us with a plan that basically addressed what the zoning can be, or the idea of what the Dutch Neck hamlet is. It will no longer be a hamlet if we have high density or high cluster housing in there, with the traffic, the runoff, there's so many problems.
Yeah.
So can we table this and come back to us with something more substantial that we can look at and say, yeah, we like that? That would be my-
Let me just make a comment on the pay my view is based on the time it is now, and we try to end at 9:30 for our meetings. It doesn't seem like we're gonna finish tonight, so by your meeting, which would basically, the process would be, it would remain open. Some changes will be made, because we haven't debated each yet, and we haven't had an opportunity to hear all the public at a later date. And where everybody from the public who hasn't spoken tonight will have a chance to speak. The board will have a chance to debate. David will have a chance to make some additional recommendations based on this conversation. So I hope that alleviates your fear of us pushing something.
Okay, so just going forward between now and then, is the website going to be the primary method for you to communicate to us? Because like a lot of people, this was a last minute thing that popped up. I mean, I don't normally look at the website every month, but perhaps I should, but we didn't. So, I mean,
Here's what I would recommend. I was gonna say it at the end, but I would recommend that anybody from the public who hasn't spoken by the time this meeting ends or continues, or people that even have spoken, submit in writing some of your concerns, recommendations. We could take that into effect. We'll have you read into the record at the next meeting. We'll save some time. Instead of me reading it, I'm a slow reader. So we'll have the public who wants to make a recommendation that submits any comments, just come up and read into the record, and we can again talk about it at the continued meeting.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Donnie, I had one question. One of the issues that we talked about at the board level was the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. Do you have any reaction? One of the issues that we talked about earlier was the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. Do you have any reaction to that issue?
I didn't come prepared to talk about that.
Okay.
Honestly,
Fair enough.
that's like a completely different issue.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let me, how many of you know what ADU is or have heard about it?
Yeah, right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Please step up to the mic, state your name.
You can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So
My name's
sworn.
George Hill. I live in Hamilton Township, but I'm a member of the Windsor Chapel. So that's what brought me here tonight. I want to say that I do agree with and I think there's good motivation to simplify the zoning in the Dutch Neck. It sounds, it sounds all the little exceptions, and I want to put a little extension on his house and all of a sudden, but what I wanted first of all, just to understand a terminology. You keep referring to a green belt area. I'm not sure that it really applies to this, but it was used several times tonight, and I just need to understand what that means.
No, very good question. So the township has a very long and proactive history of trying to preserve a green belt. Essentially, a green belt is a band of connected open space which extends through the community. The line of that green belt is usually based on existing woodlands, streams, environmental constraints. So I think the first greenbelt plan was adopted sometime in 1977. I see a yes from Sam. So it's adopted in 1977. And the township identified these interconnected areas of undeveloped open space that they wanted to preserve. So those areas are all identified as the green belt. It's a connected belt of green areas.
Okay, so it's
Not really.
Yeah, I was
not-
just trying to
yeah.
understand what it meant, so,
Not too relevant here, but
yeah, but
it-
I understand where it comes from now,
Yes.
at least I can, at least I understand it, now, two other questions, obviously in the report, you made the recommendation of, was it the cluster housing on the existing Windsor Chapel property? And I just want to know why you chose that area as
That site?
opposed to any other area in the zone.
So the reason we looked at that site, if you were to look at an aerial of the Dutch Neck area, one of the largest areas of open undeveloped land, we'll call it, would be next to Windsor Chapel, that big grass lot area. So that's essentially one of the reasons why we looked at that site to consider that type of option. If you look at Dutch Neck Presbyterian, they have a lot of open space behind them, but they also hope that's a cemetery. So presumably that's not going to get developed. This seemed like a vacant piece of property or vacant area of land more appropriately. And that's essentially why that was brought up in the analysis, just because you had that gap and we wanted to examine and bring up the idea of options there. It gets the conversation rolling, for lack of a better phrase. So a lot of feedback that we've heard back from the board, from the public, is we're not really comfortable with that. And that gives us an idea and a better understanding of how we can change our zoning going forward. But this at least kickstarts that into conversation.
Yeah, well, then the another follow-up on that is obviously if you're going to put housing back in that green, belt area there, have you thought about how you would get traffic in and out, utilities in and out? I mean, it just seems like, I can see, a snowball going and its effect, at least in my opinion, would be more than just that green area. You got to get off Village Road, right? You've got to, somehow people have got to come out of Village Road. From what we've said tonight, we would try and maintain the existing chapel building and parking around it. But again, still, you're going to have to, people are going to come in, people are going to come out. I don't know how that would affect traffic patterns or, the school, the school buses when they're coming in and out are a bit of a problem, but, manageable. So.
No, you're right. Those are all issues that would, and a zoning ordinance would be initiated, or a site plan application, but none of those are contemplated at this point.
Yeah.
This is just the starting point before expending any more energy on that. Is this even an idea that people like? So,
this is, put in my words, truly conceptual.
Truly conceptual, pie in the sky, get the conversation started. If nobody likes it, we, make the change.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You could raise your right hand.
Johanna Hendricks
Okay, you swear from the testimony you're about to
I
give
do.
me the truth.
of carrot and stick mentality where and the improvement coverage, if somebody's going to build a new dwelling point, they may have to be replaced. And then you're proposing to do that. So wouldn't that undermine property values?
So those very good questions. Those properties are located in the R20 district currently. The R20 district would be for if somebody was improving an existing dwelling, just as an incentive to try to maintain those houses. But the proposed floor area ratio and the improvement coverage.
And what if a house were to be destroyed?
Footprint of the original dwelling and the FAR can't be any more than what the original house was. And we have a section of code that would allow that.
Okay. And I had one more question relating to the Board of Education's conditional use of the old chapel for transportation. I don't understand why you would make it a permanent use when it's apparent that it's a problem in the community. There's a lot of traffic. There's noise from the dumpsters. If you're walking your child or your dog past it, trucks are roaring out of it all day long, during daylight hours. So why do we want to make that a permanent use? It's really not desirable.
One of the ideas was if we make it a permitted use and they were to submit an application to do something on the site, presumably this board would have either a courtesy hearing or an application or a site plan with that. So this board would have a little bit more control over some of the conditions that can be imposed on those improvements, which would include potentially buffering and fencing. So essentially by establishing as permitted use, what we're trying to do is get them in a venue where they might appear in front of this board. And this board is going to have the benefit of this planning document to say, hey, we understand that there's a buffering and a noise issue and fencing issue here. Could we get some opportunities to clean up the site? So it's a strategy. Right now, the board obviously can't do anything to force the Board of Ed to clean up the dumpster issue or the traffic or the noise on that site currently. But that's why we're still including that recommendation, just so that we have a history of what's being discussed.
But David, even if it were a permitted use or whether it were a conditional use, the Board of Ed has to come before the group, but only as a courtesy.
Yeah.
So we can't really apply anything to them. They're almost an autonomous.
Their hands are tied. on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, technically it should be in their capital improvement program too. So I don't know if I've not reviewed their program to see if that building is in there, but yeah.
It'll be interesting to explore what they have, what plans they have, but I think they're coming in for long range planning.
Yeah,
Sam, why don't
not
you
for
make-
that site, but for a different
Not
area.
that side.
But still, tell about the December 6th hearing.
Yeah, December 6th, the school district by law is required to come in front of the planning board and present their capital improvement plan, meaning all the improvements they plan on doing in the district. So it could mean additions to existing schools. It could mean acquisition of open space property for potential new schools. Basically, all the projects they plan on doing in the next 6 years. So they're coming in front of the planning board on December 6th to present that plan to the board. And it's just, the board doesn't approve it or deny it. It's just a state requirement that the school district has to do. So they're coming in this year to explain what their capital improvement plan is.
Can the public come to that?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yep.
voice your opinion.
And there will be public comment.
Like, we don't vote on it, but they come before the board and they present to us as a courtesy to let us know what's going on. But your voice carries a lot more weight than our voice in those.
Okay, thank you.
You could raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm your testimony about to give be the truth?
I do.
So I sworn to affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Yes, Matthew Wargo, Wargo. My address is 412 Village Road East.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple, you answered most of the questions I had, which was good. Just a couple details. The values of the setback measurements on the properties, where do they come from?
So the most accurate way to get those setback values would be through a survey. What we did, because there are so many properties here and surveying is very expensive and we can't do surveys, so you have to be licensed to do so, is that we analyze those setbacks and improvement coverages based on the lot lines identified by the county. So they digitize lot lines and they put it in a geographic information system. So we take those lot lines, measure the setbacks based on the dwellings from those aerials and come up with our best estimate. It's not going to be 100% accurate, largely because they're not survey accurate, but it gives us the best idea. And typically when you do a planning study like this in a larger area, that's going to be your best bet.
Okay, good. Some numbers were.
Oh, it's not going to, it's definitely not going to be 100% accurate.
wanted to-
Yeah, there's, if you look at some of the lot lines, they will cut through a dwelling occasionally. So you have to then look at the aerial, see where you can find the change in lawn patterns or vegetation and to measure from there. It's intricate process.
Okay, got it. And I'm just curious, is there in the document, does it say what the size of that Windsor Chapel building is? Is that part of that? Just curious how big.
No, it does not. I think we identified, well, let me double check. There's two unfortunate things we have going for us now. The Windsor Chapel Church,
Yeah, there's.
before I get, sorry, let me.
The house, yeah.
Yeah, the square footage. So it wasn't identified in the, it wasn't identified in the tax record. So typically for every single family dwelling, we used to be able to look up your tax records and see what your square footage was assessed. That wasn't identified for the non-residential uses there because they're not residential and they're not taxed. The other issue that we're now running into is there's a change in state law called Daniel's Law, where some counties have been really locking up on who has access to tax data for an unfortunate murder that happened. I no longer have access to Mercer County's tax records because they just completely wiped them off. So thankfully we got the study done in time because otherwise I would not have access to that information anymore.
Okay, got it. And then last thing, just want to echo what other people said about communication and transparency. It's not that hard to do. And we had pitchforks out on Saturday afternoon. And a lot of what you shared is good and useful. So, we're able to walk through the neighborhood. I mean, you were walking through asking for votes. You could have brought this up. You know what I mean? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Michelle Deraffeli, DE_RAFFELE. My address is
Sorry, could you spell that again? Just
DE
okay.
RAFFELE.
Thank you.
And my address is 418 Village Road East. I just want to, again, back my neighbors and say, I am vehemently opposed to having the cluster housing behind the house, behind the current housing. We have we're a very busy road. We have the school, we have a lot of people going back and forth each morning, each afternoon. When the school does have certain events, the cars are backed up all the way to almost the corner of Sawmill, Village Road West and Village Road East, making it really hard for us to get out of our driveways. We're kind of figuring out how to use one lane going in both directions. If a fire engine is coming down the road and we're already halfway down, we don't want to have any problems. My other thing is not really about planning and zoning. I just have a quick question. In our Dutch Neck community, we are having quite a big feral cat issue. I just want to know, nothing is being done about it. It's been going on for a really long time. Just want to know, like, who can we go to kind of have a conversation about how to fix it?
Well, we do have a member of the police force here tonight. Basically, animal control is handled through our local police office, and they have an animal control officer that would go out and check the site out. So the complaint would have to come into the township police office.
Just out of curiosity, where do you see them clustered? Do they,
There.
not to use that phrase, yeah.
It's to the,
Somebody's feet.
it's
Yeah,
him,
that's
it's
it.
his house.
Okay.
We've tried to talk to him about it. Animal control has been there. They said they can't trap at night. They can't really get in touch with him. And it's like, I have a dog. I've had my dog sick from these cats. On Halloween, I had to pick a dead one up off the street and put it in my
Ugh.
garbage. Like,
Okay.
they're kittens, they're babies. And it's just, there's upwards of 15, 20 cats just darting across the street.
Yeah, just send an email. Our health officer will also take a look. Otherwise, we'll call the animal control office.
Okay, who should we send an email to?
Just send an email to mayor@westwindsortwp.com
Okay,
and we will ask our health officer to take a look at it first. And then the animal control officer.
great. Thank you
I
so
just
much.
have one question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, you were talking about you were opposed to the cluster housing. What about the accessory dwellings that could actually be placed within somebody's backyard? What do you think of that? What do you think
The
of
ADUs.
the ADU? Accessory dwellings that can be placed in somebody's backyard?
I would just say, I think everybody's property is pretty well established. Once you start adding places in the back, you don't know what kind of people are coming in, coming through. And then would they have the same restrictions for those dwellings that our houses have? They have to look a certain way. They have to jive with the rest of the neighborhood. And then, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. We're just curious.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to step up?
But raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Cynthia Yoder, Yoder. And I'm at 212 South Mill Road, which is right behind the Board of Ed. So my main concern is the Board of Ed, and I appreciate what Johanna asked about it being a permanent structure. I mean, we've been there 23 years, and it's definitely been interesting having that change from a kind of quiet parking lot to a bunch of buses, you know, and the Board of Ed has been responsive. They used to come in and their alarms would go off and they were idling. And so they have been responsive and having them turn off, you know, they've been responsive. However, the buses are still there. And you know, to the point that other people were making, I would have invited more neighbors, but this all kind of came, word of mouth through neighbors. And there are people who have really little kids who live on the other side of the Board of Ed. And I think one of them is a toddler who is deaf. And so the idea of these big buses, you know, just kind of barreling down the road right near the houses where these little kids are growing up, anyway. I know that's not your issue, but if there's a way that we can bring the Board of Ed in here and make them more accountable, I often think, you know, if the Board of Ed, this little chapel was next to, you know, the mayor's house, or, you know, all due respect, you know, it's next to houses where, you know, we have been working with Mr. Aderhold, but you know, then COVID happened and lots of things that were talked about in terms of, you know, landscaping, fencing, all just went away. And we're going to pursue it because it was COVID. So, so that's my main concern. Yeah, the whole thing about the housing, we're talking about, you know, big houses or little houses, but what does happen with the huge overflow parking? And I liked what Linda Geaver said about bringing in the school to talk about potentially what would happen there, because what would happen with all those cars if that was actually housing. My other concern is the restrictions to the appearance. It's just like one line in the study, but if there is restrictions to the appearance, I mean, we live in a historic house. I love history, but, you know, again, concerned like our neighbors, like about house resale value. If you're going to resell, you don't want to have, that's the reason we don't have it on the historic registry. It's because you can get all sorts of restrictions. So who makes those restrictions? Will we get say? So that's my main concern.
So there's different ways to kind of regulate design standards, right? They can be very general, very specific. I don't know if I would recommend very specific design standards for this area for that reason that you were bringing up. What we would have to do is look at some sort of balancing act of exactly what you brought up, you know, the resale aspect and giving homeowners to an extent creative license with what they want to do with their dwelling, while also trying to maintain and you know, recognize the historic nature of that area. So whatever those design standards would be, first off, I would recommend that they not be put in the zoning ordinance, but in the design section. The reason being is, say somebody wanted to build something and it wasn't complying with those standards, it would require with the design waiver, which is a lighter lift than a bulk variance. Those design standards I would recommend be kind of kept generally open, so that way you have something that might reflect the development pattern there, but again, can't be overly strict for the reasons that you're bringing up. So you're right, it's a complete balancing act.
Yeah, gotcha. I think that's all of my questions for now, but I would appreciate if more people from the neighborhood could have a chance to come and talk.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Just really quick regarding your comments regarding the transportation building. The Board of Ed will be coming here December sixth.
Okay.
And as I stated before, your voices have much more weight than ours because we can't vote on anything they're doing, but they'll listen to the public. So I recommend you come and voice your concerns to the Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you. And I'll let them, the young parents know as well. And now that I don't think this is in your jurisdiction either, but I know in speaking with these young parents and knowing there's toddlers, et cetera, in that major road for us. Buses and cars do barrel down, even though it's 35 to 25. There is a curve. And, you know, if say you're going 45, which is very realistic, that happens a lot. By the time they get around that curb, there's a berm that's like this. So you're on the sidewalk, there's this little berm and there's a bus rolling around the corner. So it's a safety concern if you're looking at like this hamlet and how it's historic and what we can do to preserve its nature. That part is just, it's unacceptable and no one really knows what to do about it. Thank you.
You know, to that point, I don't think it would be out of the scope of this report to at least suggest some sort of traffic calming mechanism. So something that would encourage drivers that are going down that road to slow down. And there's different ways to do that. It gets a little bit more transportation oriented, but I think there could be some general language regarding that because that is an important issue. We can't control it through planning and zoning, but at least this board can put that recommendation out there.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick thing, as I'm a former school board member, so is the mayor. Is that also make a public comment at a school board meeting?
About that corner?
No, about your issue
about
with the transportation.
transportation.
Oh, about the Board of Ed.
Right,
Okay.
Right.
And just to confirm, that
okay.
corner that you're talking about, is that where Village Road, South Mill, that area there, or?
Yeah, where the Dutch Neck Church is.
Where
I
the
mean,
school- okay.
yeah,
So
that crossroad.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's where
As-
it
As
is.
soon as people turn that corner, you know, there's
Yeah, I think that's where I took the picture from the cover.
yeah, like a mailbox that'll get knocked by, you know, and you're this far away from the mailbox that gets knocked by the car. So
Yeah.
it's a safety issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's 9:27. I'll take one more member of the public unless you think you're going to speak in a lengthy amount of time. I don't want to cut you off, and of course I won't cut you off, but you know, if someone wants to come up and has some quick concerns and get it out in the open, and then I will continue the meeting till December 6th. Otherwise, if I don't see anybody willing to talk quickly, then you can come December 6th again and speak at length at that time. Okay, I don't see anybody. Everybody has a lot to say. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to swear
You
in.
have
I'm
to speak.
gonna have to swear in then. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth? Could you state your full name for the record?
Glenys Gaylor,
And is that G-A?
Glenys. And Gaylor is Gayler. Okay, the little error that I see in here is actually under my house, 415 Village Road East. You've got us down as a two-family house. We are a single-family house. And we have been for the last 10 years.
Okay, my mistake. We will fix that.
Was it ever a two-family house?
It was originally.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
okay.
But yes, we've actually lived in that house for about 24 years, so there you go. Two things, and it's really going to most of the questions that have been going on and answers. The traffic is terrible. What we do recommend is because of South Mill Road, Village East and Village West, you put traffic lights up. You would stop the traffic immediately and it would slow down because the buses are the main concern and the trucks are doing 45 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone. My house on 415 Village Road is on that bend as you just come off. My mailbox has been knocked over a couple of times. It's not only that, we have such an influx now of people that have moved into the area. The traffic has doubled. We have 2 schools. Every time there is a meeting, it's all the way up the road. There's going to be an accident at any moment. Apart from that, there's one little thing. I'm glad to say that you do landscape if we ever come to anything. You know, we are opposed at this moment from going to a green belt into houses at the back of us. But do you have any proposals on the table at the moment?
Proposals for?
For anything? Has anybody come to you?
Oh, for proposals for new development within Dutch Neck?
Yes, absolutely.
No.
Nothing. So what happens if there's, is it, I'm sorry, I can't remember this part, but how about actual businesses? Would they be allowed to build on that land?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, the potential application that can happen under current zoning is that the church could submit an application to expand, but we weren't recommending any business areas in this district.
Because I have a problem with the access. You'd be going through Windsor Chapel. I don't know where you're coming out on the other side. Again, we're back to the traffic problem.
Now,
So,
I'm sorry to interrupt. In some of the zoning districts, we do allow for certain home occupations. So say somebody wanted to open up a home office, a dentist's office.
that I don't mind.
Okay, that, because I want to
I
ask.
just wanted to know that land is not going to be developed in anything else.
No, it's not zoned for that, and there's no.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's 9:32 and we can go all night, I see. So right now I'm going to.
Just one clarification
ahead.
for staff. Do we want to continue it to December 6th for more public comment, or do you want staff to incorporate some of the changes that we're talking about tonight and have a revised document to discuss?
I would like a revised document for December 6th, if that's enough time.
I don't, we're not gonna be able to make these revisions by December 6th.
There's a couple revisions. I'm also in Scotland at the end of November.
No, you're not.
For any type of new document, we'd probably have to
Is there a
renotice.
red line version you can have, or that you took notes? No.
No, I've been taking notes as we go along, but if we were to have a new document, one of the concerns that I would have is, would we have to essentially renotice again, right? So.
Jerry gave me an opinion on this
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, I don't think we'd have to, because it would be just be picking up comments that have been made by the board members of the public, et cetera.
Because it's
I'm
study,
not-
it's not. It's
I'm
not
not
like an
adjourning
ordinance.
this meeting. This meeting is still open. This meeting is going to continue to the next meeting.
So
Also, there was Dave made a recommendation that we look into some maybe traffic calming
Okay.
devices that could be put in or recommended to be put in. So I'd have to bring our traffic engineer into the discussion too. So
Well, I don't want to postpone. I don't want to continue this into next year as possible. I'd like to, December 6th, we have the school board coming in.
That's like-
What?
The school board's coming in. It's the
Is that
capital
how,
budget. That's
I
a
mean,
lot.
what kind of,
well, I think the public's going to come and there's going to be a lot of questions from the public on the school board presentation. So that's going to take most of the meeting. We have an application coming in on December 13th for a new quick check. And then the 20th, there is an application for improvements to market fare.
Do you anticipate those improvements to be,
I
do you anticipate those improvements to market fare to be lengthy discussion or?
I can't expect a lot to take long, but typically because in the noticing, the residents from Canal Point typically come out on any application for market fair.
Okay, so then I'll ask for my colleagues, you know, I want the public to be able to continue their thoughts and I would like to get their input before we start debating on it.
So I mean, we can try to get a document for December 6th. My concern would be it wouldn't be up on the website long enough for the public to actually look
Yeah,
at those
but
changes.
My other issue with that is with the school board coming in. And a lot of public will have opinions and comments on the school board, even though it's a courtesy review, they're gonna have a lot of comments and opinions on that. That's gonna eat away at the time
Yeah.
for this Dutch Neck study. So my question is, you know, do we not do it as December 6th and do it another date? And that gives more time for the public to kind of like read through, weigh in, contact their neighbors, and then come back at a later date, because I want to get it right. I don't want to say, hey, let's next meeting, and, you know, there's only, 15 minutes left of that meeting.
Well, what I can do is I could ask the market fair folks if they wouldn't mind being moved to January 17th, and we could put this on for December 20th.
And that would be the only thing on for December 20th?
Yep.
That's a possibility. If not, then, from what I heard from David earlier, is that there's no time deadline for this study to be completed. And I would like to make sure that we probably need another full meeting solely dedicated to this study in order to complete it. And, and so if Market Fair doesn't want to move, then I would recommend, it's only my
We'll get them to
recommendation.
move. They won't think they'll have a problem.
Okay, what day would that be? But my other concern, it's butting up against the holidays too.
Right.
So,
We can do it for the 20th, and if we need to continue after that, we can. But if the board wants, staff can get stuff together so we can make the revisions and have it up on the website in advance of December 20th.
why don't we do this? I would recommend going into next year and doing it sometime in January.
We can do
Mhm.
January 17th, then would
Okay.
be the next.
That gives enough time for a new document, with all the recommendations that we've heard so far, all the things we don't, the public has commented they don't like, things that we don't like. And this way we kind of like get a fresh start with a meeting solely dedicated to this study. That way we give the public the time that it deserves to make their voices heard. Is that, and that's just my opinion and recommendation, I'll leave it to my colleagues to say, no, January's too far away.
No, I think it makes sense, gives them time to prepare, gives the public time to really look at this.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that we're gonna continue this meeting for January 17th. It's gonna be, David's gonna work on the next things in this process is David's gonna work on a document incorporating everything we've heard, everything that we've recommended. I'm gonna ask the public to submit comments that maybe you didn't have a chance, whoever didn't get a chance to speak, or maybe the people that spoke have additional things that you've heard or want to change or want to add. Submit those and just keep a copy, and we'll ask you to read into the record at the next meeting so that we can save time in having me read it out into the record. So
What's gonna be in the next version?
So
What are you
Things
putting
you-
in or out? What about the ADUs? We're taking that out?
it's going to be recommended to be removed, I think. I
And
don't
it sounds like based on some of the comments I got from the board and the public, it looks like the two major things on the chopping block would be ADUs. And it looks like we're gonna have to take a look at the clustered option and potentially remove that for the house of worship. I
Right.
think there's general consensus on that unless anybody disagrees with me, but it seems like.
Sounds like
Fine.
we don't want that. And
Mhm.
maybe some landscaping buffers in certain places could be a possibility, and also traffic,
Calming,
traffic,
calming
calming.
measures.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Traffic calming.
what do you think about the buffers? We usually don't have those. And
What was that?
what do you think about the buffers? We usually,
You know, we make a recommendation regarding buffering for the Board of Ed Transportation Facility.
Okay.
So we can make another recommendation. It's a policy recommendation. It's just something that keeps the discussion going. Not necessarily something that's going to be enforceable by this board, but I don't think it'd be too out of the ordinary to include that type of recommendation with the acknowledgement that we know that this is an issue, but if there is ever an application or a courtesy review, we'll have this document that would provide us some background. So 2, 3, 4 years from now, we won't forget.
Okay.
Not that I would ever forget, but.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think we debated enough, and I wasn't trying to debate everything. So this meeting for the draft Dutch Neck Planning and Zoning Study will be continued for January 17th.
So please talk to your neighbors January 17th, whoever doesn't know. The document will be on the website much before that.
And you'll see
You can
two
get the new
versions. One is a red line version, which summarizes all the
Okay.
changes,
I need a vote to close this
and
meeting.
the other would be a clean version.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, everybody says aye.
Michael, listen to this. How long of your?
Thank you.
No, I don't know. I don't have the.